Over the course of 2 decades in 19th-century New York, 4 accomplished women married the wealthy banker Elias Blackwell. Each entered his magnificent townhouse on Washington Square with vitality, intelligence, and ambition. However, one by one, they all suffered the same horrifying fate: a complete psychological collapse just months after moving into the lavish master bedroom. The pattern was so precise, so methodical, that when the truth was uncovered in 1842, it not only shocked Manhattan's elite, but also resonated across the state of New York. What investigators discovered was not coincidence or a family curse, but a meticulously calculated conspiracy that had been destroying women's minds for years. A far more sinister scheme. Today, we uncover the chilling truth about what happened in that house, and how one man drove 4 wives to madness, using methods so sophisticated they still send shivers down the spine today. Before we continue with the story of Elias Blackwell and his fated brides, subscribe to our channel and share in the comments what state you're watching from. You might be surprised to learn these dark events happened closer to your home than you think. The horrifying story that shook New York began in the bustling heart of Manhattan, amidst the busy docks and towering warehouses along the Hudson River. By 1830, the Industrial Revolution had transformed this colonial port into a financial powerhouse, with steamships carrying goods from afar and a new class of wealthy elite building elegant townhouses in fashionable neighborhoods. Elias Blackwell arrived in New York in 1825, a sharp 28-year-old with a fierce ambition for prosperity. Unlike his peers who inherited their wealth, Blackwell came from humble roots in Connecticut, where his father was a millwright. Elias soon learned that success required a sharp intellect and unyielding determination. Within 7 years, he established Blackwell and Associates, a banking firm specializing in loans for railroad expansion and canal projects that fueled America's westward expansion. The Blackwell townhouse, completed in 1832, was a symbol of his rise. Located on Washington Square, the 4-story Greek Revival building had 38 rooms, crystal chandeliers from Europe, and spacious parlors overlooking the park. Society whispered in admiration about the master bedroom on the 3rd floor, with its silk walls, an imported mahogany canopy bed, and a complex ventilation system that channeled air through concealed ducts. Innovations Blackwell boasted were modern marvels. Blackwell's charisma further highlighted his success. Tall and lean, with sharp blue eyes and a meticulously groomed beard, he exuded a quiet, commanding presence that made both financial tycoons and high society take notice. He navigated soirees with effortless grace, making each acquaintance feel special. This combination of wealth, charm, and status made Elias Blackwell Manhattan's premier bachelor. His engagement to Amelia Hargrove, the 1-year-old heiress of a shipping magnate, sparked celebrations as an ideal match. The 1,833 wedding at Trinity Church was hailed by the New York Evening Post as the pinnacle of the season, attracting over 400 prominent figures. Amelia Blackwell's decline unfolded gradually in the autumn following her wedding. Initially, it seemed like the adjustments of a new bride. She grew quiet at afternoon teas, often pausing mid-sentence, as if straining to hear a distant sound. Her cousin, Lydia Hargrove, wrote in her diary that Amelia spoke of the house whispering to her. She would stop her conversation and tilt her head toward the empty walls, Lydia recorded, saying there were whispers calling her name. When asked, she would laugh it off, saying, "It's just the wind in the ducts, dear cousin. Great houses have their secrets." By winter, Amelia's strange behaviors escalated. She insisted on sleeping only in the master bedroom, declaring the other rooms silent and wrong. The staff, once charmed by her kindness, called her habit the listening fits. She would press her ear to the walls for hours, not looking out but focusing inward, nodding as if receiving invisible counsel. The crisis erupted during a dinner party in February 1834 for Wall Street investors. In the middle of dessert, Amelia abruptly stood up, walked to a wooden panel on the wall, and began a lively conversation with it, gesturing as if debating an unseen opponent. The guests watched in stunned silence as she gestured emphatically and seemed to argue with invisible voices, occasionally giggling with a strange tone no one had ever heard from her. She kept asking why the voices sounded so tired, one attendee wrote in a journal, but the most unsettling part was that she seemed to be waiting for answers, pausing as if the whispers were replying to her. When Elias gently tried to lead her away, she became agitated and insisted they weren't finished speaking. That night, the maid Eliza Thorne found Amelia at midnight in her room, rhythmically tapping the walls with a silver spoon, searching for what she called the hollow spots. When disturbed, Amelia turned with a serene smile and explained that she must hear what's behind them. The whispers promised the truth. The walls, when tapped, revealed nothing unusual, but Amelia nodded with satisfaction, as if she had identified a crucial communication channel. Dr. Theodore Langford, the family physician, was summoned early the next morning. His examination revealed a physically healthy 1-year-old woman who appeared to be suffering from what he termed acute auditory hysteria with delusional obsessions. In his notes, which would later become crucial evidence, Dr. Langford wrote, "Mrs. Blackwell exhibits an obsessive focus on sounds emanating from the walls, believing they convey knowledge of the house's past. Most disturbing is her firm conviction that these voices are separate entities guiding her." Within weeks, Amelia required constant supervision. She roamed the rooms, pressing her ear to surfaces, arguing with the speakers in the shadows about the house's hidden history. Covering the ventilation ducts provoked fits of rage. She clawed at the metal grates until she bled. The climax occurred on the 20th of March, 1834. Amelia gathered every metal object, candlesticks, silver trays, even picture frames into the master bedroom, arranging them in a bizarre pattern she believed would amplify the whispers. By dawn, she no longer recognized anyone, including her husband, and spoke only to the walls as if they were her real family. Dr. Langford, after consulting with colleagues in Philadelphia, gave the difficult advice to commit her to the New York lunatic asylum. On a drizzly April day, Amelia left in a closed carriage, still muttering to the walls of the house. "I will return to learn more." She would spend the remaining 39 years of her life there, her sanity never returning and never ceasing to search for the source of the invisible sounds in her cell. The commitment of Margaret Hartwell sent shockwaves through Millbrook's social elite, but the community's response revealed the complex attitudes toward mental illness that characterized the 1832nd. While some whispered about hereditary madness or moral failings, most of the town's prominent families rallied around Jeremiah, viewing him as a tragic figure whose promising marriage had been destroyed by forces beyond his control. The prevailing medical wisdom of the era attributed female mental illness to a variety of causes ranging from excessive reading to disruption of natural feminine roles. Dr. Henley's official report submitted to the county authorities cited Margaret's condition as likely resulting from overstimulation of the nervous system due to the sudden elevation in social position and domestic responsibilities. This explanation satisfied most observers as it aligned with common beliefs about the delicate nature of the female constitution. For 3 years following Margaret's commitment, Jeremiah Hartwell lived as a reclusive widower, maintaining his business interests but avoiding social gatherings. The master bedroom was sealed, its contents covered with white sheets, and Jeremiah moved to a smaller room on the 3rd floor. The household staff, reduced to just the essential positions, reported that their employer spent most evenings in his study, poring over medical texts and correspondence with various physicians about his wife's condition. During this period, Hartwell became obsessed with understanding what he called the science of mental affliction. He accumulated an extensive library on topics ranging from phrenology to the latest European theories about nervous disorders. His personal journals, discovered decades later, reveal a man genuinely tormented by his wife's fate and desperately seeking rational explanations for her breakdown. In 1838, news arrived that Amelia had passed away in the asylum. Her final years were marked by a progressive physical deterioration that accompanied her mental decline. The funeral was a private, modest affair, attended only by the closest family members. Amelia was buried in the Hargrove family plot, her tombstone bearing only her name, dates, and the brief inscription, "Beloved wife, now silent." The tragedy seemed to mark the end of a chapter in Elias's life, but those closest to him noticed that Amelia's death had changed him in subtle but profound ways. His business associates remarked that he had developed an almost obsessive attention to the acoustics and silence of his surroundings. He began requiring the ventilation ducts in his office to be adjusted daily, and he developed a habit of pausing mid-meeting to listen to the room's echoes, as if to verify that the space was completely normal. More significantly, Blackwell had begun to speak of marriage again, but in terms that struck many as coldly analytical rather than romantic. He would discuss the requirements for a suitable wife with the same approach he applied to assessing an investment, creating what he called a resilience profile for potential candidates. It was during this period that Blackwell met Sophia Moreau, the 4-year-old daughter of a French importer with deep connections to New York's commercial hubs. Sophia possessed a rare combination of poise and intellectual beauty that immediately captured Blackwell's attention, but more importantly, she demonstrated what he described as exceptional mental fortitude during their courtship conversations. Their 1,839 wedding, announced in the summer, surprised many in Manhattan society who had assumed Blackwell would remain a grieving widower forever. But those who observed the couple noted that Elias seemed to have regained his former confidence and calm demeanor. For her part, Sophia appeared genuinely happy and excited to become the mistress of the elegant townhouse on Washington Square. The wedding took place in September, a more modest affair than Blackwell's first marriage, but still refined enough to satisfy social expectations. As Sophia moved into the house, Blackwell made a decision that would later seem significant. He reopened the master bedroom, having it completely renovated with new silk wall coverings, new furniture, and most notably, an improved ventilation system that he claimed would ensure fresh air throughout the night. Sophia took on the role of mistress of the Blackwell household with enthusiasm and style. She was particularly proud of the master bedroom, often showing visitors the complex ventilation system as a testament to the house's modernity. She seemed to take special pleasure in the fresh air it provided, often opening the vents to feel the gentle breeze while happily chatting with her personal valet, Pierre Dubois, about the day's plans. For the first few months of their marriage, Sophia seemed to be thriving in her new life. She quickly became popular among the local social set, known for her sharp wit and confident demeanor. Unlike Amelia, who had been somewhat more reserved, Sophia possessed a natural poise that made her an ideal hostess for Elias's dinner parties and business gatherings. But by the fall of 1,839, those closest to Sophia began to notice subtle changes in her demeanor and habits. The first signs of Sophia's decline appeared in November 1839, manifesting in ways that were eerily reminiscent of Amelia's early symptoms, though the household staff had been strictly instructed never to discuss the previous Mrs. Blackwell's illness with the new bride. Sophia's personal valet, Pierre Dubois, a middle-aged man who had served the Moreau family for years, kept detailed notes in his private diary about his mistress's changing behavior. These notes, discovered years later hidden in an old trunk, provide the most complete record of Sophia's gradual transformation. Madame Sophia has begun to linger by the ventilation grates, Pierre wrote in early November. Tonight she stood there for nearly an hour, but not to breathe the fresh air. She tilted her head, listening, as if to a distant conversation. When I asked if she needed anything, she said, "They are sharing an important piece of information. Pierre, I must pay attention." By December, Sophia had developed what she called whispering dialogues, though she insisted they were different from imagining sounds. According to Pierre's accounts, Sophia would stand near various vents in the house and engage in dialogues, pausing to listen and responding to unheard questions or comments. Unlike Amelia's agitation, Sophia's conversations seemed pleasant and informative. "They teach me secrets of managing the house that I never knew," Sophia confided to Pierre one afternoon, "about the guests who have stayed here, about the secrets hidden in the pipes. They are also very knowledgeable about social events. They have given me excellent advice on dinner seating arrangements." Dr. Langford, still serving as the family physician, was discreetly consulted when Sophia's behavior became more pronounced. His private notes from this period reveal his growing concern about what he termed a most troubling parallel to the previous Mrs. Blackwell's condition. However, Sophia's symptoms differed in significant ways that made diagnosis difficult. While Amelia had become increasingly agitated and incoherent, Sophia remained articulate, rational, and functional in all areas except her relationship with the Whispers. The turning point came in January 1840, when Sophia announced to the household staff that she had learned something very important from her conversations with what she now called the speakers in the ducts. She claimed she had discovered that the previous wives were still present in the house, their voices trapped in the ventilation shafts and trying to warn future wives about the truth behind the walls. Sophia has become convinced that the ventilation ducts contain some form of auditory memory, Dr. Langford wrote to a colleague in Philadelphia. However, unlike typical cases of hallucination, she maintains perfect rationality in all other matters. She continues to manage the household efficiently, maintains normal social relationships, and shows no signs of the physical deterioration typically associated with mental illness. The obsession appears to be completely focused on the ventilation system and what she believes it reveals about the house's history. Elias's reaction to his second wife's developing condition was markedly different from his response to Amelia's illness. Instead of seeking immediate medical intervention, he began what he called careful observation and documentation of Sophia's behavior. His journals from this period show a man trying to understand the apparent pattern emerging in his household. Sophia's condition is progressing along remarkably similar lines to Amelia's, he wrote, yet with enough variation to suggest that the underlying cause may be environmental rather than constitutional. Both women were perfectly healthy before residing in the master bedroom. Both developed an obsession with whispers within months of taking up residence. Both claimed to receive information from the ducts that they could not have known previously. This analytical approach led Blackwell to conduct what he called controlled experiments with Sophia's condition. He began documenting exactly which vents triggered the strongest responses, at what times of day the dialogues were most intense, and what specific information Sophia claimed to receive from the whispers. His notes reveal a systematic attempt to understand whether external factors might be contributing to his wife's mental deterioration. The experiments yielded disturbing results. Sophia's most intense episodes occurred in the master bedroom in the evening, always involving the same main vent that had been Amelia's focus. The dialogues followed consistent patterns, with Sophia asking questions about the house's history and receiving what she described as detailed answers about previous guests, sealed-off ducts, and experiments on unwilling ears. Most unsettling was Sophia's claim that the voices had shown her the truth about what happened to the first wife. According to Sophia, Amelia had not gone insane at all, but had discovered something so shocking about the house, or its owner, that she had been deliberately made to appear mentally ill to conceal her findings about his eavesdropping empire. The voices say Amelia heard too much, Sophia told Pierre in February 1840. They say that's why Amelia had to be sent away, to protect the important secret, but they also say Amelia is still trying to warn people through the whispers because the truth must eventually come out. By winter, Sophia's behavior had become impossible to hide from Manhattan society. She had begun refusing to attend dinner parties unless the host's parlor had good ventilation, where she could listen for their advice on appropriate conversation topics. When forced to attend events in stuffy rooms, she became anxious and distracted, often excusing herself early to return home to her dialogues. The situation reached a crisis point in March 1840, when Sophia announced to Elias that she had learned something that would change everything about their marriage and his position in the financial community. Sophia's revelation came on a cold March evening when the winter wind seemed to whistle through the cracks of the townhouse. Elias found his wife in the master bedroom, standing near the central air vent. But this time she was not engaged in her usual whispering dialogues. Instead, she stood perfectly still, her arms crossed, listening intently with a look of profound sadness. "They have let me hear the truth about this house," Sophia said without turning around. "About what you do to the women who live in this room, Elias. About why Amelia really went mad." According to Elias's journal entry from that evening, Sophia then revealed a series of allegations that left him stunned. She claimed the voices had let her hear hidden ducts within the walls, secret pipes where sounds from other rooms were channeled, and evidence of what she called auditory experiments conducted on unwilling ears. Sophia has constructed an elaborate fantasy involving secret ducts and eavesdropping activities, Elias wrote. She insists that Amelia discovered evidence of these alleged crimes and that her mental breakdown was artificially induced to silence her. Most disturbing is her claim that the ventilation system somehow contains memories of these events, accessible only to women who spend enough time in the master bedroom. But Sophia's accusations went beyond vague conspiracy theories. She provided specific details about the house's construction, claiming the voices had revealed the existence of hidden listening tubes connecting the master bedroom to Elias's office. She described complex acoustic surveillance systems integrated into the ventilation, and most shocking of all, She alleged that Elias had been systematically poisoning his wives with vapors designed to cause auditory hallucinations and mental confusion. "The vapors that come from the ducts to help me sleep well," Sophia confronted her husband that night. "It's not fresh air at all, is it? They showed me what it really does, how it makes women hear things that aren't there, how it makes them appear insane to outside observers." Elias's response to these accusations was swift and decisive. The next morning, he consulted with Dr. Langford about Sophia's rapidly deteriorating mental condition, emphasizing the paranoid delusions and conspiracy theories that had replaced her earlier benign dialogues with whispers. Dr. Langford, already concerned about the parallels to Amelia's case, agreed that Sophia posed a potential danger to herself and others. "Mrs. Blackwell has developed a systematic delusional structure that mirrors the earlier case in disturbing ways," Dr. Langford noted. "Her insistence on secret ducts and eavesdropping activities suggests a complete break from reality, possibly exacerbated by the isolation and pressures of high society life. I fear that without immediate intervention, she may progress to the agitated episodes that characterized the final stages of the first Mrs. Blackwell's illness." But Sophia was not ready to be quietly committed to an asylum. Over the next several days, she began what she called her investigation, systematically examining the house's walls for the secret ducts the voices had described. She recruited Pierre and several other staff members, convincing them to help search for hollow wall panels, removable vent grates, and concealed openings. The search yielded unexpected results. Behind a wall tapestry in the master bedroom, Pierre discovered a section of paneling that seemed loose. Further examination revealed a sliding panel that, when pushed aside, exposed a narrow duct running along the wall. This duct, cleverly designed, appeared to connect the bedroom to Elias's study and contained what Sophia described as listening tubes, brass-ended connectors that allowed someone in the study to eavesdrop on conversations in the bedroom without being detected. "The voices were right," Sophia told Pierre triumphantly. "The listening system is real, just as they said. If this part of their story is true, then everything else must be true as well." The discovery of the listening system sent shockwaves through the household staff, but their impact on Elias was even more profound. His journal entries from this period show a man struggling to maintain control of a situation that was spiraling beyond his ability to manage through conventional means. "Sophia's delusions have led to the discovery of technical features I was unaware existed in my own home," he wrote. "The architect made no mention of these ducts in the original designs, and I can only assume they were installed for purposes I cannot fathom. However, Sophia's interpretation of their significance has become completely divorced from rational explanation. She now views every aspect of the house's design as evidence of a vast conspiracy directed against women in general, and wives in particular." As word of Sophia's discoveries spread through Manhattan's afternoon teas and gentlemen's clubs, Elias found himself facing questions he could not adequately answer. Why hadn't he known about the listening tubes? What was their original purpose? Most importantly, how could he explain the disturbing coincidence that both of his wives had developed nearly identical forms of mental illness, focused on the same bedroom and the same ventilation system? The pressure intensified when Sophia's father, concerned about reports of his daughter's behavior, arrived from the financial district for an unannounced visit. Henri Moreau was a shrewd importer who had not built his empire by accepting convenient explanations for inconvenient problems. His meeting with Sophia revealed a woman who appeared perfectly rational, except for her insistence on the revelations from the voices, and his subsequent conversation with Elias raised questions that demanded immediate answers. "My daughter claims she has discovered evidence of criminal activity in your household," Henri informed Elias during a tense evening meeting. "She also alleges that her mental condition is being artificially induced through vapors administered without her knowledge. These are serious accusations that cannot be dismissed simply because they originate from someone whose sanity is questioned." Just when we thought we'd figured it all out, the horror in the Blackwell townhouse intensifies. If this story is giving you chills, share this video with a friend who loves dark mysteries. Hit that like button to support our content, and don't forget to subscribe to never miss stories like this. Let's discover together what happens next as the truth behind the whispers finally begins to emerge. The confrontation between Henri Moreau and Elias Blackwell took place in the townhouse's parlor, a room notable for its poor ventilation. Sophia had insisted on being present, claiming she needed to listen to their advice before making any important decisions about her future. When informed that this room had almost no airflow, she became agitated and requested a nearby window be opened. "I cannot discuss important matters without their guidance," Sophia insisted. "They know things about this house and its history that no one else understands. They tried to protect me just as they tried to protect Amelia." Henri's reaction to his daughter's behavior was markedly different from that of previous observers. Instead of dismissing Sophia's claims as delusional, he began asking specific questions about the information she claimed to receive from the voices. His approach revealed details that had not emerged during Dr. Langford's medical examinations. "Tell me exactly what these voices have revealed about Blackwell's business activities," Henri requested. Sophia's response provided information that should have been impossible for her to know. Detailed descriptions of a rival's failed investments, secret contract terms that predated Elias's ownership of the house, and most disturbingly, accurate information about financial negotiations that had occurred in Elias's office, which she had never entered. Elias's attempts to explain these revelations as coincidence or lucky guesses were undermined by Sophia's continued accuracy. She described deals Elias had never mentioned to her, detailed his private exchanges with Wall Street financiers, and most shockingly, provided accurate accounts of conversations that had taken place in the study downstairs while she was in the bedroom. "The voices hear everything that happens in the house," Sophia explained. "They have been listening for years, accumulating information about all the meetings and guests. They know about the backroom deals, the blackmail material, the real reason Elias installed this complex ventilation system in his home." As Sophia continued her revelations, a pattern emerged that transformed the investigation from a medical case to a criminal inquiry. The information she provided suggested that the Blackwell townhouse had been deliberately chosen for its ductwork and eavesdropping capabilities, that Elias's banking dominance was built on information gathered through covert surveillance of his guests and competitors, and most damning of all, that his marriages were strategic arrangements designed to provide a respectable domestic cover for his activities. The evening's discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Langford, summoned by Elias to provide medical testimony about Sophia's condition. However, Henry Moreau's presence changed the dynamic of what Elias had intended as a commitment hearing. Instead of a simple evaluation of Sophia's mental state, the meeting became an interrogation of the circumstances surrounding both wives' illnesses. "Dr. Langford," Henri inquired, "in your medical opinion, what could cause two different women with no previous history of mental illness to develop nearly identical symptoms after residing in the same location?" Dr. Langford's response revealed the limitations of 1,842nd medical knowledge, but also his growing suspicions about the case. While such coincidences are unusual, he admitted, they are not impossible. Environmental factors, including stress, isolation, and exposure to certain substances, could theoretically produce similar symptoms in different individuals. However, the specific focus on whispers and the consistent reports of receiving information from the ducts suggest either a shared delusion or what, Doctor? Henri pressed, or the possibility that both women were exposed to similar environmental conditions that produced similar auditory hallucinogenic effects, making them susceptible to suggestion and false memories while maintaining their ability to function normally in other areas. The implications of Dr. Langford's statement hung heavy in the stuffy parlor air. If Sophia's condition was artificially induced, then Amelia's similar breakdown took on an entirely different meaning. Rather than tragic coincidences, the wives' mental illnesses became evidence of systematic manipulation designed to discredit women who had heard information that threatened Elias's carefully constructed facade. As the evening wore on, Sophia's behavior became increasingly erratic, but in ways that suggested desperation rather than madness. She repeatedly requested to stand near the open window, claiming she needed to confirm important details from the whispers before making serious accusations. When her requests were denied, she became agitated and began describing the contents of private conversations and secret contracts that Elias insisted she could not possibly know. The crisis reached its climax when Sophia suddenly stood up and announced that the voices had revealed the location of the evidence that will prove everything. She led the group to Elias's study, where she directed them to a section of wall behind a massive bookcase. Following her instructions, they discovered not only the concealed listening tubes, but a secret compartment containing documents and materials that would transform the investigation into a criminal prosecution. The documents hidden in the secret compartment told a story that was both more complex and more horrifying than Sophia's voices had suggested. As Henry Moreau examined the papers by gaslight, the true scope of Elias Blackwell's activities began to emerge from years of careful concealment. The first revelation came from a leather-bound ledger containing detailed records of eavesdropping activities conducted from the office. Entry after entry documented private conversations, financial secrets, and business negotiations that had been overheard and transcribed without the knowledge of the participants. The entries, written in Elias's distinctive handwriting, revealed how he had used this information to sabotage deals, blackmail rivals, and gain an edge in the Wall Street financial market. The 10th of April, 1835, Mr. Vanderbilt discussed steamship expansion plans in the parlor, shorted rivals' stock accordingly. The 22nd of July, 1836, investor Astor revealed concerns about a land investment to his wife in their bedroom. Excellent leverage to acquire that property cheaply. But the eavesdropping activities were only the beginning of what the hidden documents revealed. A second collection of papers, wrapped in oilcloth and hidden in a false drawer, contained correspondence with a doctor, Karl Becker, a Prussian specialist in what he called auditory therapies. Dr. Becker's letters, written in a mix of English and German, described a systematic program designed to induce controlled cognitive instability in women who posed a threat to their husbands' interests. The treatments involved the carefully measured release of vaporous compounds, including extracts of belladonna, light opium fumes, and hallucinogenic fungi, which produced auditory confusion and disorientation while leaving the patient physically functional. The beauty of this therapy, Dr. Becker wrote in one letter, is that the subject retains enough rationality to appear normal in casual interactions while developing specific auditory obsessions and delusions that discredit any inconvenient truths they might reveal. The focus on whispers is particularly effective as it appears to be a natural nervous sensibility taken to a pathological extreme. Sophia's accusations about being poisoned by vapor were not paranoid delusions. They were accurate descriptions of a systematic poisoning program designed to drive her insane while maintaining the appearance of a natural mental illness. The fresh air Elias provided through the ventilation system contained carefully measured doses of substances that produced auditory hallucinations, especially when combined with the stress of high society life and the psychological pressure of living under constant eavesdropping. Amelia Hargrove had not suffered a tragic mental breakdown. She had been deliberately poisoned when she discovered evidence of Elias's eavesdropping activities. Her increasingly erratic behavior was the result of vapors that made her hear disturbing sounds in the walls, while her attempts to communicate what she had heard were dismissed as the ravings of a madwoman. The most chilling discovery came from a final set of documents that revealed the true scope of Elias's plans. He had not simply been conducting eavesdropping from his home. He had been operating a private financial intelligence network, using his social position and banking connections to gather information for clients among New York's financial elite. The house's ductwork was not just simple listening tubes. They were part of a complex system that included ducts for distributing poisonous vapors, secret storage for blackmail material, and connection points for listening in on multiple rooms at once. Elias's marriages were not romantic relationships. They were business arrangements designed to provide him with hostesses who could gather information at social events while remaining above suspicion due to their apparent respectability. When Amelia discovered evidence of these activities, Elias had used Dr. Becker's experimental auditory therapies to discredit her potential revelations. When Sophia began asking similar questions, he had simply repeated the same process, confident that the medical establishment's ignorance about the true causes of her symptoms would protect him from serious investigation. Henri Moreau's reaction to these revelations was swift and decisive. As a successful importer with connections throughout Manhattan's financial world, He understood immediately that the documents represented evidence of a criminal conspiracy on a massive scale. More importantly, he recognized that his daughter's life was in immediate danger as long as she remained in Elias's control. "Sophia will be leaving this house tonight," he informed Elias, "and she will be taking these documents with her as evidence for the authorities. Dr. Langford, I assume you will be revising your medical opinion regarding my daughter's condition in light of this evidence." Dr. Langford's response revealed the ethical crisis facing medical professionals confronted with evidence that their patients had been systematically poisoned by people they trusted. "If these documents are authentic," he said slowly, "then both Mrs. Amelia Blackwell and Mrs. Sophia Blackwell were victims of deliberate poisoning designed to simulate mental illness. Mrs. Sophia's condition should improve rapidly once the toxic vapors are removed from her environment." Elias's reaction to the discovery was surprisingly calm, suggesting a man who had prepared for the possibility of exposure. "The documents you found are forgeries," he claimed, "planted by Sophia during her delusional episodes. The correspondence with this alleged doctor, Becker, is fictional, designed to support her paranoid fantasies about being poisoned. I'm afraid her mental condition has progressed to the point where she's capable of creating elaborate false evidence to support her delusions." But Henri Moreau had anticipated this defense. "Then you won't object to having independent chemists analyze the residue in these ventilation ducts," he replied, pointing to a removable vent grate. "And you certainly won't mind if we bring in handwriting experts to verify whether these documents were written by you or by someone else." The confrontation might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by an unexpected voice from the doorway. Mary O'Donnell, the head housekeeper, who had served the Blackwell family since the house was built, stepped into the room with an expression of grim determination. "I can't stay silent any longer," she announced. "I've watched 2 good women destroyed by what happens in this house, and I won't let it happen to others. Mr. Moreau, your daughter is telling the truth about everything. I've seen the master putting strange substances into the ventilation system. I've heard the strange sounds coming from his office at night, and I've seen what those things do to the ladies who live in this bedroom." Mary's testimony provided the final piece of evidence needed to corroborate Sophia's claims. As the head housekeeper, she had access to all areas of the house and had observed Elias's activities for years. More importantly, she had witnessed Amelia's deterioration and recognized the identical pattern beginning to emerge in Sophia's behavior. "I saw Mr. Blackwell adding strange powders to the ventilation system's filters for both wives," Mary confessed, her voice trembling with years of suppressed guilt. "He told me they were air-purifying herbs recommended by Dr. Langford, but I noticed they came from unmarked packages delivered by secretive couriers. When I asked about them, Mr. Blackwell said they were experimental blends from European chemists not available in New York shops." Mary's detailed account revealed the methodical nature of Elias's deception. She described how he had varied the mysterious blends, timing their release to coincide with the times the wives spent long evenings in the master bedroom. She had observed both women's growing obsession with whispers, their increasing isolation from friends and family, and their progressive inability to distinguish between real sounds and hallucinations. "The most terrible part," Mary continued, "was watching them try to tell people what they were experiencing, only to have everyone dismiss their words as madness. Mrs. Amelia kept insisting someone was talking to her through the walls, that the air in the room smelled strange, that the whispers told her secrets that couldn't be real. Everyone said it was nervous hysteria, but I knew something was wrong when Mrs. Sophia began describing the exact same experiences." Dr. Langford's professional reputation hung in the balance as the full scope of his unwitting participation in Elias's scheme became clear. The sedatives he had prescribed for both women's nervous tension had been overshadowed by Elias's toxic compounds delivered into the air under the guise of fresh air therapy. His diagnosis of mental illness had provided the perfect cover for systematic poisoning, allowing Elias to destroy his wife's credibility while maintaining his own reputation as a caring husband dealing with family tragedy. "I need to get Mrs. Sophia out of here immediately," Dr. Langford announced, his professional composure cracking under the weight of his realization. "If she has been breathing hallucinogenic compounds, removal from the source of exposure is critical. More importantly, we need to begin a process of purification to counteract any lingering effects." But even as the evidence mounted against him, Elias Blackwell demonstrated the calculating intelligence that had made him successful in banking. Instead of continuing to deny the accusations, he shifted to what appeared to be a confession designed to minimize his legal exposure. "You are correct that I have been conducting listening activities from this house," he admitted with calm deliberation. "The duct system was installed by the original architect, a man with similar financial interests, who found them useful for gathering information on potential investors and competitors. When I purchased the property, I continued using these facilities because they provided significant advantages in negotiations." Elias's partial confession was carefully crafted to acknowledge the eavesdropping while denying the more serious charges of poisoning and conspiracy. He claimed that his wives had discovered the listening tubes independently and had suffered mental breakdowns due to the stress of learning about his business activities. The vapors, he insisted, were legitimate aromatherapy treatments that had unfortunately proven ineffective against their deteriorating conditions. "Amelia became obsessed with the idea that I was using the ducts to spy on her personally," Elias explained, "when in reality I was simply conducting necessary financial intelligence gathering. Her mental condition deteriorated rapidly once she became convinced that every aspect of our marriage was part of some elaborate deception. Sophia has unfortunately followed a similar pattern, constructing elaborate conspiracy theories to explain perfectly legitimate business activities. This explanation might have been persuasive under normal circumstances, but the presence of Dr. Becker's correspondence made it impossible to sustain. The Prussian specialist's letters were too specific, too detailed, and too obviously connected to the symptoms both women had experienced to be dismissed as coincidence." Henry Moreau had no intention of allowing Elias to escape through legal technicalities. "We'll let the courts determine whether your activities constitute legitimate business or criminal conspiracy," he declared. "In the meantime, Sophia will be removed from this house immediately and placed under the care of physicians who haven't been compromised by your deceptions." The confrontation was reaching its conclusion when Sophia herself, who had been sitting quietly during much of the discussion, suddenly spoke with a clarity and rationality that had been absent from her voice for months. "The voices aren't gone," she said, her tone perfectly calm and lucid. "They are still here, still trying to warn people about what happens in this house. But I can hear them clearly now, without the vapors clouding my senses. They are not spirits or hallucinations, they are me, the part of me that remained rational and listened while the rest of my mind was being systematically destroyed." Sophia's revelation represented a breakthrough that transformed the entire understanding of her condition. The voices had been her own subconscious mind, fighting against the effects of the hallucinogenic vapors by creating an alternate persona that could listen and remember events accurately. The dialogues with the whispers had been internal dialogues between the drugged, confused Sophia and the rational Sophia, who was trying to piece together the truth about her situation. "I remember everything now," Sophia continued. "Every conversation I heard through the ducts, every document I glimpsed when Elias thought I was too disoriented to understand, every detail about his business arrangements and his correspondence with Dr. Becker. The voices weren't giving me information. They were helping me remember information I had gathered myself but couldn't access consciously because of the drugs." The immediate aftermath of Sophia's recovery and the discovery of Elias's conspiracy sent shockwaves through Manhattan and the broader New York financial community. Henry Moreau wasted no time in presenting the evidence to the city authorities, while Dr. Langford began the process of documenting Sophia's recovery as proof that her condition had been artificially induced. Within days of being removed from the toxic environment, Sophia's symptoms began to disappear rapidly. Her obsession with the whispers faded as her natural mental clarity returned, and her ability to distinguish between vapor-induced auditory hallucinations and reality was fully restored. Most significantly, her detailed memory of the information she had overheard during her months of impaired consciousness provided investigators with a comprehensive picture of Elias's criminal network. The legal proceedings that followed revealed the true scope of what prosecutors termed the Blackwell conspiracy. Evidence gathered from the townhouse's secret compartments documented years of eavesdropping, blackmail, and information trafficking that had corrupted financial dealings across Wall Street. Elias's clients had included corrupt investors, dishonest politicians, and unscrupulous financiers who had paid substantial sums for sensitive information about their rivals. The tragic fate of Amelia Hargrove took on new meaning as investigators exhumed her body and conducted post-mortem examinations using the most advanced forensic techniques available in 1842. Traces of belladonna compounds and other toxins found in her remains confirmed that she had died not from mental illness, but from the cumulative effects of systematic vapor poisoning. Her death was reclassified from natural causes to homicide, making Elias liable for murder charges in addition to conspiracy and fraud. The New York Lunatic Asylum, where Amelia had spent her final years, cooperated with the investigation by providing detailed records of her condition and treatment. These documents revealed that Amelia had maintained periods of lucidity throughout her confinement, during which she had consistently claimed that her husband was whispering wicked things through the walls to hide his crimes. Her statements, previously dismissed as the ravings of a madwoman, were now recognized as accurate testimony from a victim of deliberate chemical torture. Mary O'Donnell's decision to testify against her employer proved crucial to the prosecution's case. Her detailed knowledge of the household's daily operations, combined with her observations of both wives' deterioration, provided investigators with a timeline that correlated perfectly with the administration of Dr. Becker's experimental compounds. Her testimony also revealed the existence of other potential victims, including two of Elias's previous wives, Clara, married in 1840, who was deemed mad and had disappeared, and Beatrice, married in 1841, who had been institutionalized, as well as guests who had reported strange headaches and confusion after staying at the Blackwell townhouse. Dr. Becker himself was located in Boston, where he had been conducting similar experiments on patients at a private sanatorium. His arrest led to the discovery of a broader network of physicians and businessmen who had been using medical therapies as weapons against inconvenient women throughout the commercial centers of the East Coast. The scandal, dubbed the Whispering Conspiracy by newspapers, eventually implicated dozens of prominent men who had used similar tactics to silence wives, daughters, and female business associates who threatened their interests. Elias Blackwell's trial became one of the most sensational criminal proceedings in New York history. The prosecution's case was strengthened by Sophia's lucid testimony about her experiences, Mary O'Donnell's detailed account of the household's operations, and the extensive documentary evidence found in the house's secret compartments. Most damning of all was Dr. Becker's decision to cooperate with authorities in exchange for reduced charges, providing expert testimony about the effects of the vaporous compounds used to poison the wives. The defense attempted to portray Elias as a victim of circumstances beyond his control, claiming that he had been manipulated by Dr. Becker and other conspirators who had convinced him that his wives were genuinely mentally ill. This strategy failed when prosecutors presented evidence showing that Elias had initiated contact with Dr. Becker and had specifically requested treatments that would produce symptoms of auditory insanity while leaving the victims physically functional. The jury's verdict was unanimous: guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder for Amelia's death, conspiracy to commit murder for all 4 wives, and multiple counts of conspiracy, fraud, and extortion related to his eavesdropping activities. The judge's sentence reflected the severity of the crimes and their impact on the community. Death by hanging, to be carried out in 1842. Sophia's recovery was complete by the time of Elias's execution. She had returned to her father's household, where she gradually resumed social activities and eventually remarried a French diplomat. She lived a long and healthy life, but she never spoke publicly about her experiences in the Blackwell townhouse beyond her testimony at the trial. The Blackwell townhouse itself became a symbol of the darker aspects of America's financial expansion and the vulnerability of women in a society that readily dismissed their concerns as hysteria or madness. The building was demolished. The site is now a public plaza, and its secret ducts, mirrors, and whispers have vanished into history. But the legacy of the Blackwell conspiracy extended far beyond the fate of one criminal and his victims. The case led to significant reforms in New York's laws regarding the commitment of mentally ill patients, requiring independent medical evaluations and stricter oversight of private institutions. It also sparked a broader conversation about the use of medical treatments as tools of oppression and the need for better protection of women's legal rights. Dr. Langford, devastated by his unwitting participation in the conspiracy, devoted the remainder of his career to studying the link between environmental factors and mental health. His research, partly funded by compensation from Elias's estate, contributed to the development of more sophisticated diagnostic methods, distinguishing between true hallucinations and toxin-induced symptoms. He also became a staunch advocate for patients' rights, arguing that every account, no matter how unbelievable, deserved objective investigation. The discovery of the true fate of the 4 Blackwell brides raised disturbing questions about how many other women throughout America might have suffered similar treatment at the hands of husbands, fathers, or guardians who found it convenient to have them declared insane. Historical records from the period suggest that the Blackwell case was not an isolated incident, but rather one example of a broader pattern of medical abuse that may have claimed hundreds or thousands of victims whose stories were never investigated. The case also highlighted the importance of believing women who reported unusual or disturbing experiences, even when their accounts seemed improbable or contradicted conventional wisdom. The insistence of Amelia, Sophia, Clara, and Beatrice that they were hearing whispers, being poisoned, and being manipulated had been dismissed as symptoms of mental illness, when in fact they were accurate descriptions of the crimes being committed against them. Today, the site of the original Blackwell townhouse is a public square on Washington Square, a historical marker installed in 1990, nearly 150 years after Elias's execution, commemorates the victims of the Whispering Conspiracy and serves as a reminder of the importance of protecting vulnerable individuals from those who would exploit their trust and authority. The marker's inscription reads simply, "In memory of Amelia, Sophia, Clara, Beatrice, and all victims of medical abuse." Their courage in speaking truth amidst the whispers of deceit helped establish vital legal protections that continue to safeguard patients' rights today. This mystery shows us how easily the vulnerable can be victimized by those in positions of trust and authority, and how crucial it is to listen carefully when someone reports that their reality doesn't match what others expect them to experience. What do you think of this story? Do you believe everything was revealed? Or might there have been other victims whose whispers were never discovered? What secrets lie within your own walls? Leave your comment below. If you enjoyed this tale and want more chilling historical stories like this, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with someone who loves mysteries. See you in the next video.